Good evening, New Bedford guides, and good evening, the Greater New Bedford area. Thank you again for joining episode, I don't know, we're in the teens now, of the Chris Resendes show on New Bedford Guide, which is every Thursday at 7 p.m. This nice evening tonight, we have two great guests. We have the Republican candidate for Attorney General, Jay McMahon. Jay is going to be running against the prior guest of the show, Dan Shores, for the Republican spot, and then hopefully one of them can go up against the current Attorney General, Maura Healey, and give her a good run, and may the best man or woman win come next year. We also have a somewhat of a local celebrity, deservingly so, Jamie Casey. Jamie Casey is a very inspirational man. This guy, I mean, I've known Jamie for decades now, and I actually met with Jamie yesterday for the first time in a while, and a quick meeting turned into a 2-hour conversation. I could have stayed 3 more hours probably. Jamie's a wealth of knowledge, an asset to the community, and we'll be discussing a lot of what Jamie is doing in the community, along with some of the projects that he works on, and some new stuff that's breaking in New Bedford as well. First, I want to start off with Superintendent of New Bedford Public Schools, Pia Durkin. As you all know, people that follow the show, she was scheduled to be on the show next week. Also, as you all know, she has resigned and is retaining her post until the end of the school year. Now, Ms. Durkin committed to the show weeks ago, and even after her resignation, there's a lot to be asked of her. She's been on WBSM and on the Standard Times, and in my opinion was asked some softball questions, nothing of importance. And word got out to her probably that I wasn't going to be so nice with my question, and I was going to ask her some hard questions, and she never responded. And finally, I got Arthur Mata, who actually has been a great in-between, let me know tonight, finally, after chasing him for 2 weeks, that she's canceling her appearance. I've also sat down with John Oliveira on a previous episode, and John has been served with a no trespass order. Here's an elected official, that is a school committee official, who's not allowed on school property and may not even be able to be sworn in on school property or attend any school committee meetings until this no trespass order is taken care of, if it ever is, while she's in office. Here's the issue, folks. She's leaving. John's coming in. 6,000 plus voters in New Bedford voted for this man, and most likely his main reason of getting elected was that he promised to get the current superintendent, Pia Durkin, out. She then resigned after seeing the writing on the wall that John was going to accomplish this goal. He is part of now a school committee that needs to find a superintendent for one of the most important jobs in our city, which is the superintendent of schools. She oversees the education of our future. She oversees how the schools are run and the process it takes to get the students taught and graduated and into higher learning. She needs to go immediately. We cannot let her and her agenda impede a current an elected official from doing his job, and part of his job is to find her replacement. I'm actually going to call for Ms. Pia Durkin to resign immediately, because all she's doing is getting in the way of the New Bedford public school system's future at this point. She's done this no trespass order to anybody who's questioned her in the past as far as parents. That's been her known weapon. And now she's doing it against an elected official. To me, that's overreach, and she's accomplishing nothing by sticking around and not letting elected officials do their job. John is now part of the process, and she needs to respect that. She can either come to an agreement with John. Here's a man, like, you know, no trespass order is issued to a man who's never been accused or convicted of a crime of violence or threats. So why she needs this trespass order, I have no idea. So, Mayor Mitchell, school committee members, I'm also calling on you. If she doesn't want to leave before the January inauguration, of our newly elected school committee member, I ask you guys to force her out, to fire her immediately, hire a designee, or appoint a designee, excuse me, in the time that you're looking and searching for the new superintendent. Let the schools run smooth and let the process happen as the voters have spoken. 6,000 constituents of yours voted for this man to do a job, and he is unable to do it. And the other sad part is he is the father of a student in schools and is unable to attend a parent-teacher conference that was just scheduled this past week. I don't know how that is possible. A man that's actually really involved with his kids is now not allowed to be part of a school function of a school where a parent attends a parent-teacher conference. Since she canceled on the 7th, John has been a guest on the show, but now we have some new stuff to talk about. I am going to replace Dr. Durkin with John Oliveira next week. John Oliveira will be able to talk about these issues and let you know what exactly is happening. It's a sad time in the city when stuff like this happens, and it's a sad time for voters when the people they elected are not allowed to do their jobs because of personal interests. With that, I'd like to welcome my first guest on the show, Attorney Jay McMahon, who is a candidate for Attorney General, which will be, he's actually running as a Republican against Dan Shores. They will go up against each other, and one of them will come out strong and vow for the seat that Maura Healey now holds, and hopefully we can get a good election where the best person wins and serves the Commonwealth accordingly. Jay McMahon, thank you for attending.
Chris, it's good to be here this afternoon or this evening, and hello everyone in Greater New Bedford. Love to be here.
Jay, give us a little background on yourself, your law practice, and what made you want to run for this position?
Okay, well, I've been a lawyer for 30 years. My practice has always been in either the Wareham or the Buzzards Bay area. I live in Buzzards Bay. And since 1993, I've been at the same location at 25 Main Street in Buzzards Bay. I have a general practice of law. That means I have taken on just about every kind of case you can think of. Just about every kind except for maybe a patent. I don't think I've ever done a patent. But other than that, I've been in every court of the Commonwealth. I've been in the United States Court of Appeals in Boston, been in the Federal District Court. I've been in the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts, the Appeals Court for the Commonwealth, the Superior Court, in a whole bunch of counties, almost every district court in Massachusetts. There may be a few that I haven't been in. The probate court. I have taken on all kinds of cases. I've also been before federal agencies, state agencies, and municipal agencies. So I've got a pretty well-rounded grasp on Massachusetts jurisprudence. Now,
you've been a resident of Massachusetts, right? Most of
your life? All my life I've been a resident of Massachusetts. A couple of times I've had extended stays out of the state, but my residence has always been in Massachusetts.
Nice. Jay, the first question of the night I'm going to ask of you is, you're running for this position of Attorney General. In your opinion, sir, what are the duties of the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts?
Well, it's interesting. The Attorney General's office is like a huge law firm. They got over 260 lawyers. They've got 5 divisions. They've got over 300 employees. And they have an investigative force of around 300 state troopers. So it's a huge operation. And they've got, like I said, they've got 5 major divisions. And they're involved in the Attorney General position itself is the top elected law enforcement officer in the Commonwealth. And what the Attorney General does is set policy for law enforcement. And it's over a whole bunch of areas. But for instance, in criminal, the Attorney General can preempt any criminal investigation, take it over. They can do whatever they want with that. They can either enhance the investigation, move across counties, go statewide. The Attorney General can also, they can decide not to take a case and leave it up to a district attorney if the district attorney wants to take it or not. They have concurrent jurisdiction with the district attorney in any case. So in other words, they can preempt if they want to. Most of the time they don't.
I understand the term preempt. Maybe you can let the viewers that might not understand it know what you're saying.
Basically, it means if the district attorney has a case, or even local police have a particular case they're working on, the Attorney General can decide that they're going to take that case over because it either serves some interest of the Commonwealth or actually they don't need a reason. But that's what some of the reasons are for them to do it. They take over a case. If there's a case...
Generally to set precedent. Excuse me for the interruption.
Yep,
correct?
to set precedent, and also if it's multi-venue. In other words, there's something going on in Plymouth County, Worcester County, and Bristol County, and say drug trafficking or something like that, they take over the whole operation. And they can take it over from start to finish. They can come in the middle of a case. They could make a determination that they want to null pros a case. Now, practically speaking, they would make a phone call to the local DA and say, there's a reason why we want this case to go away. We want you to null pros it. Now, it could be for a number of reasons. It could be that they've got they turned a defendant into an informant, yes, and they want to do away with the prosecution. So there's a number of reasons why they can do it. And they do that. That's part of the AG's function, to function in that capacity. They also have a lot of other cases. They investigate civil rights violations, consumer affairs, on all kinds of issues, consumer affairs, environmental matters. They could also represent and be an enforcement to other state agencies. So it's a huge law firm, and they can pick and choose or decide to be exclusive in the prosecution of any kind of case.
In law enforcement firm.
Well, it's supposed to be, but we know in some cases, and especially in this particular AG, she loves to go into federal court and sue the Trump administration.
That actually leads me to my next question. A follow-up to the first, which is what in your opinion are not the duties of the Attorney General that our current Attorney General, Maura Healey, is performing?
Well, first of all, the Attorney General is not to make law. They're to enforce law. And you asked me earlier what was one of the reasons that propelled me to run for Attorney General. In July of 2016, Maura Healey issued her enforcement order. It was called the Copycat Assault Weapon Enforcement Order. Basically, the way she went about it, it was like issuing an edict or a fiat by a despot, someone who just issued it on her signature. Now, this is an enforcement order that she issued that no state representative voted on it, no state senator voted on it, the governor never knew it was coming, and she issued it. And by issuing it, she upset and overturned 18 years of gun policy in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And she did it on her signature. Now, many of us are saying it's unconstitutional. I have a personal conviction that it violates the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. She lists a whole bunch of rifles and handguns on that order. And she said that
the rifles and the handguns that are on that order were the ones that were included in the original, the original legislation. Mm-hmm. What she did is that she turned around and said the copies and duplicates of, which is not the case, and it's not the wording of the law. She basically amended the wording of the law.
That's exactly what she did. And by doing that, and by to me, that was infringing. And, you know, think about it. The reason she said she was doing that is because she wanted to keep guns off the street. She wants to keep guns off the street. So by doing that, she's banning guns from lawful gun owners, from people who have licenses to carry in Massachusetts. And she did it 1 week before she was going to go down to the Democratic National Convention in Cleveland to endorse Hillary Clinton. Now, basically, I mean, she doesn't fool any of us, certainly not the gun owners. She doesn't fool us. What she did was she did that so that she could go and endorse Hillary Clinton, and she could say, Hillary, we know you're going to be president, and you're going to need a United States Attorney General. You're going to need a gun grabber just like you. So she brought her order, and she says, here's my credentials right here. I'm a gun grabber just like you. When you're looking for an Attorney General, I'm your man.
So basically, is what you're saying is that she politicized. That decision was just a political motive.
It was for political expediency. It's not the first time she's done that. Now, she did that one against our Second Amendment rights, and she didn't care. In fact, people brought it out to her. There were rallies for 3 weekends in a row in Boston Common against that enforcement order. She didn't back down. She dug her heels in. Now, that's not the first time that she's done something against or for political expediency against our rights. In fact, even though we have a clear right, Second Amendment right, that says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, she didn't care about infringing on that. Now, that brings me to the next point. In January of this year, President Trump, one of his first acts of office was to issue a temporary ban in 6 Middle East countries, a temporary travel ban, until they can institute extreme vetting. Now, a lot of people don't know what extreme vetting is. I'll give you an example of extreme vetting. Apply for a license to carry firearms in Massachusetts. That is extreme vetting. You got to answer a lot of personal questions about yourself. You got to talk about whether you have any kind of a criminal record or if you have a history of mental illness. That all comes out, and that goes into the decision whether you're going to get a license to carry in Massachusetts or not. Now, putting aside whether some of those questions interfere with your Second Amendment right, she actually went and sued Trump to enjoin him. Enjoin means to stop his temporary travel ban. She said, and get this, she said that Trump's travel ban is religious in nature because those 6 nations that the ban affects were Muslim majority nations. So she said that they affect the First Amendment right. So you got to ask yourself, the First Amendment right of who? The First Amendment is for Americans. The First Amendment is a constitutional right for United States citizens. These people are foreign nationals, and she says they have a right to be here in the United States. Now, you don't have to be a lawyer to know that's not true. They don't have a right to, no foreign national has a right to be in the United States. That's why we have a visa process. But she said that Trump is violating their civil rights. So she goes to the United States District Court in Boston, in Massachusetts, and tries to enjoin Trump and opposes his temporary travel ban. Now, you got to ask yourself, who's she representing? She's representing those foreign nationals? Is she representing people from 6 Middle Eastern states and not the United States citizens? Certainly not the citizens of Massachusetts. But take her priorities and her premise in this case and take it to its logical conclusion. She would have people come into this country, people that we know are containing, well, the refugees we know from the Obama administration, from the intelligence from the Obama administration, that elements of ISIS and Al-Qaeda are infiltrating those refugees from those countries and want to come into this country, not necessarily to do us harm, but to certainly to kill us. They want to kill us. And so Trump took this action. Now, Maura Healey wanted to interfere with that action. Basically, she's saying they have a right to be here in the United States. That's wrong. However, she did this for political expediency, not because she's concerned about public safety for Massachusetts citizens, because if she was, she would not want elements of ISIS and Al-Qaeda coming in here. No, she did it for political expediency because she hates the Trump administration. And I'm telling you, she has proven herself to care less about our civil rights. She will do what she wants to do, whatever her lunacy, left-wing thinking wants her to do. She will try to take the Commonwealth there, and she doesn't care about our rights.
Basically, you're saying that she just politicizes her office.
Absolutely, she does.
Absolutely. Now, we have to really concentrate on the Commonwealth. This show, I've brought upon some many different topics that really affect the Greater New Bedford area.
Right.
All the way from stuff we discussed on the pre-interview, drugs, domestic violence, human trafficking, all stuff that is dealt with as Attorney General.
Right.
The DEA has established a heroin task force in New Bedford.
Yes, they have.
There's, I believe, 6 cities in the country that were chosen for this program, and New Bedford was one of them.
Well, because
it's not a good thing. It's not a good exclusive club.
It's not a good club to be in, but it's a good thing for New Bedford to have had that distinction, only because the problem is being addressed.
Yes, sir. As I asked your opponent, your first opponent, which will be Dan, I'm going to ask you the same question. What's your comprehensive plan to help New Bedford in this area, this region, which includes Fall River, Wareham, which is the gateway to the Cape, and New Bedford, to fight this opioid epidemic?
This opiate crisis. Of course, you know, it's a crisis when it happens to your neighbor. It's a catastrophe when it happens to you and your family. There's not a family in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that has not been affected by the opiate crisis. My own family, me personally, I lost my oldest son to opiates. So I've got a personal part in this thing. But
sorry for your loss.
Well, he was a war hero. And I'll tell you how it started with him, and I'll put it in the 10-second segment. He was in part of Iraqi freedom. He was in one of the troops, beginning troops, to enter Baghdad, and they wound up doing something. They were under enemy fire, but he didn't get hit by enemy fire. He had to lift something and move something, and he ruined his back. He wanted to make the Army a career, and but when he went to re-up, they told him that because of his condition, he was unfit for duty. So they discharged him to the VA. And Chris, the VA said, yeah, we can treat that. And they put him on OxyContin. And after several years, they realized that they were making opiate addicts out of tens of thousands of veterans. So what they wound up doing was they tried to dial it back. In other words, they give you a 20-day supply for 30 days, thinking they were going to wean these guys off. No, it didn't work. All of them made up the difference on the black market. And that's why we've got veterans now who are dying of fentanyl and heroin because they're no longer getting any opiates from the VA. So it's a serious problem, and you're asking how is it going to affect this community? What
could you do as Attorney General to help it?
Oh, there are tons of things that can be done. First of all, since Maura Healey's been connected with the AG's office, the death by opiates in Massachusetts have quadrupled. So something that we're doing at the state level is terribly wrong. When it comes to opiates, you gotta do a three-prong approach. You've got to do effective rehabilitation. Right now, we don't have that. The programs that people either get sentenced to or that people wind up being assigned to are not effective. In fact, they're about 99% failure rate. I'll tell you how I found this out. while I've been on the campaign trail, early on, I've been meeting with parenting support groups. And I happened to meet one down on the Cape, and there was about 50 parent couples. And we were sharing stories about loved ones who were in the opiate trap, just addicted to opiates and can't get out. And so we were talking about rehabilitation. And I asked them, how many have loved ones that have gone through a rehabilitation program, say once? No hands went up. I'm like, oh, I must have asked that wrong. I said, how about gone through twice? No hands went up. And I asked my wife, I said, am I asking this question wrong? She goes, no, keep going. I said, let's try 6 times. How many have done it 6 times? A couple of hands went up. I said, how about 7? A few more. I said, how about 12? Most of the hands went up. I said, how about more than 12? The rest of the hands went up. Wow. Think of it, 12 times through a rehabilitation program. And most of them, when they get through the program, they're on methadone, Suboxone, or Vivitrol. So the point is, it's not working. So someone has to do something about it. Someone has to take point for this. Now, you can take point on it through the AG's office. It's a bully pulpit, and you can use it. But that's not the only thing, because the AG's office gets a lot of funds, and she's done it against, like, for instance, CVS and Walgreens. She put the soft touch on them through an administrative action. She got $100,000 each from them. That's something that can go into a successful program. Now, there are successful programs out there. There is a successful program right now that's called the Massachusetts model. It had 250,000 Massachusetts residents have been cured through this problem. Now, when I say cured, I don't talk about swapping out one opiate for another. I'm talking about going through a successful cure, a successful program, and to be cured at the end of the program. But we have to commit to long-term rehabilitation because, well, the brain needs to heal. It's not like alcoholics. People think we could treat it like an alcoholic program, put them through a 90-day program.
Dry them out and kick them out.
Exactly right. Dry them out, kick them out. It doesn't work. We need to commit to long-term rehabilitation. Now, I've said on the campaign trail, if a number of these people, see, it's like a dripping faucet. If all these people, something happened to them at once, like a hurricane or something that came through, wiped it out, we had all these deaths, we would do something about it.
It kind of has.
Well, it has in the long run. Of course it has. But we're not committing to it. Now, the governor says, and I'm taking him at his word, that he's committed to resolving this problem. I talked to a bunch of state legislators. They say they're committed to resolving this problem. But I haven't seen the money come forth, and I haven't seen the program come forth, and that's the problem. So that's only one aspect. We got to dry up the source, and we have to be brutal in prosecution. See, people don't like to hear that. They say, oh, you're talking police brutality. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about prosecution of this. I'm talking about the AG taking the lead and prosecuting these perpetrators of this poison on our loved ones. I'm talking about strong sentencing. Now, Maura Healey came out and said she thinks that the sentencing guidelines are too harsh in Massachusetts. I say they're not harsh enough. I say if this problem is quadrupling, we got to send a strong message. We have to make it in Massachusetts so difficult and dangerous and hazardous for these purveyors of this poison that they're going to do one or two things. They're going to see the errors of their ways and give up their trade, or they're going to move on to another state where the laws are more lenient. That's the second thing. The third thing that I'm concerned with is public safety. I'm concerned about her plan and her desire to see Massachusetts a sanctuary state. Because I'm going to tell you what that means. Now, I know we have a lot of immigrants here in New Bedford. Most of them are law-abiding. Mm-hmm. But Maura Healey says she wants to turn the state into a sanctuary state. That means she wants to stop communicating and cooperating with federal authorities. Now, think of what that says. Right now, we know that 80% of the opiate trade and deaths are from fentanyl and heroin. Fentanyl and heroin you don't get from CVS or Walgreens. It's not sold over the counter, and it's not manufactured in Massachusetts. So where does it come from? Most of it comes from China, and it gets into our country through Mexico. The feds know that. The Border Patrol knows it. Custom knows it. DEA knows it. ICE knows it.
Yeah.
And the FBI knows it. So what does this say when it comes to enforcement and drying up the source? Maura Healey says she wants to make Massachusetts a sanctuary state. I say we do just the opposite. We enhance our cooperation with federal law enforcement. They are the biggest tools we need because they know how this poison is coming into New England and particularly into Massachusetts. I would not make this a sanctuary state at all. I would do just the opposite. I would work with these people and cooperate with them and dry up the source.
Of course you would, because I mean we just talked about the task force.
That's right.
It's part of the deal.
But I got to tell you something.
You can't just smack one agency and then push aside, shake hands with one agency and push aside another. That's not how it works.
It is not how it works. And I got to tell you something. A couple of months ago, we had a big operation down on the Cape.
Yes.
Okay, DEA came down and they did it. No local officials were there at all. It was completely all fed.
I got something else to ask you. We prosecute gangsters back in the day as in terms of two questions actually. The bully pulpit.
Yep.
Quickly, I just want to let people know that what that is exactly. As Attorney General, what is the bully pulpit?
Okay.
I know what it is, but people might not know what that is.
Okay, here's what it is.
Just a quick
the bully pulpit is when a prominent federal or state official has access, he has authority in certain areas, and he expresses his opinion, broadcasting it over all of media sources, and basically pointing out wrongdoing that he may not have authority or complete authority to correct, but he points it out anyway. Corruption is a good example,
yes.
Pointing out corruption. If there's the Attorney General, for instance, if the Attorney General puts out an opinion about corruption in Washington, D.C., absolutely sees it. It maybe has very little ties to Massachusetts, but points it out anyway and say someone in authority that can correct that should be doing that.
Perfect. My next question, before we got to kind of move along here. We're taking a little longer than I thought. I asked you yesterday something that's near and dear to me. The last two questions I'm going to ask you about. First is domestic violence.
Yes.
We had a few guests on, friends of mine, that were victims of domestic violence. I want you to touch upon what you would do as Attorney General to help them out. And then secondly, you spoke about protecting the Second Amendment, which,
right.
As you know, we met previously and talked previously. I own guns and masks, so I obviously stand with the Second Amendment. I need you to touch upon other things that other people in the Commonwealth other citizens' rights that you'd protect besides gun owners, and anything from alternative lifestyling to whatever other stuff there is, like the bakeries that are forced to cook bake cakes for people for LGBTQ communities and the LGBTQ community itself. Are you going to protect the business owners' rights and as well as any form of fashion of any lifestyle? And what would you provide as Attorney General to make sure that everyone in the Commonwealth is protected equally and as passionately as you are with the Second Amendment? So we'll start off first with domestic violence and then follow up with that question.
Well, domestic violence has been with us since the beginning of time, and it's going to be with us long after this generation passes. We need to protect the victims of it clearly. It's got to be a case where we keep people apart and respond when we first hear of the violence occurring. In other words, most of the time, the initial call is a 911 call by the local police department. Local police department comes, investigate. Let's assume in this case it's a boyfriend and girlfriend thing, but it could be any form of domestic partners. It could be any family members, whatever it is. The 911 call comes and the police come, and right now the way it works is they make a determination. someone has been hurt by another person, there's usually an arrest made. Some police departments have a protocol that if there is a call of domestic violence, someone is coming back to the station in handcuffs. So if you got two people fighting each other, they both are bruised, there is an issue. If they both get arrested, they can both apply for a restraining order, and they can both get a restraining order against each other. What we were talking about yesterday in the pre-interview was about if one of the persons in the home owns guns.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
We can do that as well.
Okay. Well, why don't you ask me something?
You've already proven that you're very Second Amendment. What I'd like you to do is also prove that you're also very, what you could do as an attorney general to help these victims of domestic violence.
Well,
ones that are proven to be abused. You know, you're doing now you're getting into the initial police contact of the situation.
Right.
I want to get into more of the prosecution and the protection of victims.
Okay. Well, as you know, each district attorney and the attorney general's office has victim witness people. I'm going to tell you some of the problems that you come into prosecuting these cases. You need the cooperation of the victim. If the victim, and we're going to talk in a minute on a case, we're going to assume a case where the victim is going to cooperate and go on. A lot of times the police and the district attorney's office or any of the prosecutions are going to continue with the prosecution, but sometimes it ends. Sometimes it ends because the victim decides that they don't want to go forward for whatever reason. But where the person has been injured, and where the person is, especially if it's a case where they've got medical bills and all that other stuff, that's part of the prosecution process where you can get restitution. You can get, if the guy is during the pendency of the case, you can get a restraining order, but you can also get a stay away order during the case, and you can also get restitution as part of the ending of the case.
Perfect. All right. Let's touch upon what else I said. You've proven to be a strong advocate for the Second Amendment. It's going to take a lot more than that to be elected here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Absolutely.
It's almost like an adverse thing to actually be that strong of a proponent of the Second Amendment here in this state. So, what can you do as a candidate to help others besides the firearms community as Attorney General? What are you going to say to them? And you can tie this into because we're running up against the clock, your final 2 minutes of where you can just sell yourself. I'll let you do that as well.
Okay.
So if you could just do that as well as tie my question into that.
Okay, let's talk about the First Amendment. There's a lot of laws that are being proposed, some have been passed, called hate speech. Now, there is such a thing as hate speech. Hate speech, while someone is committing another crime, such as assault and battery with dangerous weapon, attempted murder, and they are using words that are toward that goal. That can be hate speech. That is an aggravating factor of in the crime, or an aggravating element. But there are some things that the legislatures have tried to pass as hate speech, which was really against thought. And the First Amendment is to prohibit the government from interfering with expressing thought, political thought, social thought. They can, and the Supreme Court has said that legislatures can pass commercial speech, laws governing commercial speech, so that people don't come on TV and say that their product cures cancer when really it's snake oil and it doesn't do that at all. Yeah. So you can't lie about a particular product. But we have other things. If you want to talk about theology, about different religions, there's some proposed laws that are saying to comment on someone's particular religion is hate speech, because of disagreement. And that is intending to suppress public dialogue. And the First Amendment is to protect public dialogue. So there's a number of things that I would do to step in. But I'm going to tell you something. Let me just say, put it right out there. When I take the oath of office, it's going to tell me, and I'm going to swear to, upholding the Constitution of the United States and the laws thereunder. I'm going to be defending the Constitution of the United States and the laws thereunder. I intend to do that. I'm going to uphold and defend the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the laws thereunder. Now, you asked about, a few moments ago, about the LGBTQ community. I make it easy. They're human beings. They're going to get every right that the human beings get under the constitutions, under both constitutions. And if it's a Second Amendment, if it's First Amendment, I'm going to protect their rights. I'm going to give everybody equal rights, not invasive rights, but equal rights.
Awesome. Well, Attorney McMahon, I really appreciate you. I got you one more minute to just tell us why we should vote for you and why you should be the next Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
The reason you want to vote for me is because I am the law and order candidate. I am the person who's going to go into this office and bring some sense of reasonableness. I'm going to bring some sanity to this office. The Attorney General's office has a division that's responsible for investigating and prosecuting public corruption. There's not been an indictment handed down since she's been the Attorney General. Now think about that. What is this division of lawyers doing? One of the first things I'm going to do when I go into the Attorney General's office and is to investigate the Attorney General's office and find out why they can't find corruption in Massachusetts when the feds can find it in just about every city. So I'm going to be working hard on your behalf. I'm going to set it up so that we do have a hotline where you can call in tips and we will follow up on those tips. If you find that there is no bid contracts going on in a certain city, you find out that some people in the city, there's payoffs, you call us, we're going to investigate that. And we'll keep you confidential, but we will investigate those things and we will follow the money trail. And you will be proud that you elected me as your Attorney General. And I thank you for watching this program.
Well, Attorney McMahon, thank you so much for your time. And again, I'm sorry about hearing about your son. That's a topic that's near and dear to us here on the show. As a matter of fact, our next guest is in recovery and he's doing some special things.
Excellent. I'm going to stick around so I can hear the rest of the show.
He's an excellent person. Again, thank you for your time, sir.
Chris, thank you for having me on the show.
And I'll catch you after the show. Guys, as you know, I had Edwin Cartagena on a couple weeks ago. And I got to learn and research what's going on in Puerto Rico and how hard they have it over there right now. Between the corruption and the infighting in our government, it's not healing that well over there. They're still without electricity. The electric company out there is extremely corrupt. The government out there is pretty much in cahoots with them as well. And there is infighting amongst Democrats and Republicans to get the show on the road over there. Edwin's been doing some good work, God's work out there. He's heading over there for his second trip. He's going to be doing, donating some stuff and bringing more supplies. He already had one successful mission, and he's on his second. What he needs also is money and funding to get this done. There's a benefit on December 16th. Unidos para Familias Fund, which is United for Families. It's a benefit, music, dancing, cash bar, December 16th at Gifts to Give. And it starts at 5:30 for cocktails, 6:30 dinner. Tickets are $50. Sponsors, you can buy a table for $1,000. There's still a few tables out there, guys. This is an extremely important event that needs to be funded. It's going to help people that are part of the United States get the help they need. Edwin is doing this and doing it on his own time, and the cash is all being sent. All proceeds heading to Puerto Rico. So please, if you have any questions, check the Facebook page. I'll actually, at the end of the show, I will post the events link in the comments section. Check that out. Also, guys, this past weekend, a past guest of mine, Manny DeBrito, and a friend of mine, Christian Farland, decided that we're also going to do something for these families. 100 and I guess, I'd like to say 120 some odd families, 290 people total have moved to the greater New Bedford area. There's probably 134 children. So being that it's Christmas time, guys, I've set up some drop-off locations. We'll be posting it on our Facebook page, New Bedford Guide. We're going to do a toy drive for these kids. Ages range from infants to 18-year-olds. I'm going to get the breakdown tomorrow from Community Connections in the United Way, and we're going to break down the needs of gifts, and we're going to give these kids a special Christmas. We have several businesses in the area that are coming through. I will go live from their locations, so that way they can, where to go and drop these gifts off. And it's a blessing to have people that are willing to help last minute. We had great response from the community. Christian, Manny, and I are very proud to be part of this community and the outpouring of support that I got on one Facebook post to make this happen. Thank you, everybody. You know who you are. And we're getting the signs made, and I'll be posting all that information on Facebook. Now to the star of the show, of a guy I've known for a long time. I worked with him at the Sheriff's Department 20 years ago. It's been a long time. Both of us were different people back then. I spent 2 hours with this guy yesterday. I could have spent 5 hours with him yesterday if I had the time and he had the time. He basically had to kick me out of PAACA yesterday. With no further ado, Jamie Casey, how are you, buddy?
How you doing, Chris?
Jamie, yesterday we went over a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we did.
Like I said, gosh, I can touch upon 100 things that I want to, but we don't have that time. But we're going to keep going until we get most of it out tonight.
Okay.
Jamie, let's start off with an introduction of yourself to those who don't know you, which I don't think there are many viewers right now that don't know who you are.
That's because all my friends are on here watching this. So yeah, I'm Jamie Casey. I been born and raised in New Bedford. I grew up in the North End, New Bedford Public Schools. My story is nothing spectacular. It's definitely one of hope, obviously, if you're caught up in the things that I got caught up with. I grew up, middle-class family, suburbs, and, my family wasn't perfect, like most. My parents split when I was 10, and, I think lost kid, I was seeking sort of something more. Or some sanctuary, I guess, maybe from some of the hurt or whatever. Whatever the reason. I turned to drugs. I was about 12 years old the first time I started experimenting. By the time I was 14, I was drinking 15 and 16 harder drugs, selling drugs, the whole nine. And I just kind of ran amok most of my teens and young adult life, and didn't realize what I was getting myself into. It was just all about having fun, the party life, so on and so forth. And as everyone knows, the party ends. Typically when the party ends, most people go home. I stuck around. By the time I was 25, I had a stepson and two beautiful little girls. I had realized at that point that I had a major problem, that there was something wrong with my incessant need and obsession with drugs and alcohol, and I couldn't function without them, So it was kind of my escape at the beginning, and then it became a habit, and then it just became a way of life, and it owned me, They say in the first step, I was powerless over this thing at that point. And I definitely realized that. I knew that, I needed help. And I had, for years sort of searched for answers and for the freedom, that I needed. And I went through various inpatient and outpatient programs throughout, the South Coast. counselors, my poor counselors, God, you know. Some of them are actually still working. I'm pretty impressed.
I'm sure you learned a lot from them. So you say you're poor counselors, but I'm sure you're using the tools they gave you then.
Sure. I actually, I still am very good friends with one, not two. And, you know, it was tough. I mean, I was not exactly willing to do what needed to be done. And so, again, I failed miserably in all these attempts, medications, psychiatrists, you know, psychologists and whatever. And, you know, I just kept getting worse and worse, you know, and you know, it was an overdose in '99. I mean, I've had, you know, a bunch of things happen.
Let's just, sorry to interrupt, but let's get back to, because this is something that I really want to talk about after that, really, because we started this all off last week, was the mental illness thing. You were diagnosed.
Yeah, I had multiple diagnoses. I mean, I think they were just trying to figure out what was wrong with me, to be honest with you. You know, depression, bipolar. I had severe anxiety and panic disorder. You know, multiple prescriptions. You know, the thing is when you're using drugs and alcohol to the extent that I was, you know, there's no way that your brain chemistry is right, and obviously all the side effects of that would definitely mimic or replicate these types of mental illnesses. So, I mean, it's just the same, you suffer from them, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I was like self-destructive, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, self-inflicted. So yeah, I mean, you know, I went through that and battled that. So it's almost like this vicious cycle where you're self-medicating because the medications aren't working because you're self-medicating. And, you know, you just can't get off that wheel. So, yeah, I mean, I came to I actually, one thing that I'd done in that process was I had run into an old friend who I knew was kind of had lived a life like I had, but last I'd heard he had gone to prison, and you know, and didn't hear from him for years, and you know, I just figured, oh well, you know, he fell off the face of the earth, and bumped into him again right around the age of 25, and he was in the church, and it was like a completely different person, and I was kind of like, what happened to you, buddy? You know, and you know, it was refreshing. He had this like sense of freedom and peace and contentment and joy, and he liked to hug a lot. You know, that was the thing, you know, from handshakes to deep, meaningful hugs.
What's this guy's name?
Matt Bedford. He still does it. Yeah. And he's a hugger, and he's a good man. But he, you know, he and I hooked up, and he kind of took me under his wing and you know, showed me the ropes, explained, you know, what he had found through faith. And, you know, at the same time, I mean, I was, you know, I was hungry for it. You know, there was a time where I thought I was an atheist, and then sort of agnostic, and then, but, you know, I was just searching and seeking, and that was my own worst enemy, if anything. I was just trying to be king of my own kingdom. That's what I always say, you know. But he really explained and broke it down to me and helped me into some questions and, you know, things like dinosaurs and all that fun stuff, and, you know.
Yeah, the common arguments.
Yeah. But anyway, so I feel bad because he's another one that I ran, you know, ragged for about 10, 11 years, in and out of the church, in and out of treatment, battling addictions and other stuff, other crises, you know. I was married with children, and they got dragged through it as well, you know, and you know, it was just ugly. You know, addiction is a family disease. It affects everybody. I use the term lightly, as you know, but you know, the idea is that it definitely is an affliction that hurts a lot of people, not just the addict. And so I finally, right around March of 2009, after years of failures and fumbles, right, I ended up losing everything, and it was right around March. I remember my ex-wife had enough, and God bless her for putting up with me for as long as she did. She's a good woman, and you know, great mom, but you know, enough is enough, and that was it. You know, I kind of realized at that point that I had destroyed pretty much everything I had. Yeah, it was ugly, and rather than own it and take responsibility, I sort of self-destructed. I went on my worst run ever for about 5 months straight, and I mean, you know, literally was just destroying myself. And then by about August of 2009, my mother, my brother, and a couple of best friends of mine, you know, Brian Doobie and Mike Turgeon, who's a state trooper now, and Brian's my pastor. Another crazy story for another time. You'll have to get him on this show to explain that story.
Absolutely.
He's awesome. But yeah, we, you know, they sat me down, and they didn't realize that I was ready. I was just up in my mother's room. It was my birthday. I was 36 years old that day, and realized what I had done and what I had lost, and was just ready to sort of do something, really finally do something, you know, not this in and out stuff and halfway in.
By do something, let the viewers know what do something was.
So I was, well...
You told me that you almost took your own life.
2 weeks prior to that, I was... I had just come off of a pretty bad bender. I was really, really down, and my mother was out of town, and you know, I had just said, you know, maybe I'm just better off. Really, everybody's better off without me in this world,
Yeah.
and so you get to that place, especially after a drug bender, you know, that you're
Coming down.
you're a mess and depression and everything
Yeah.
else, and so I had kind of made this decision, and then in the midst of that, I sort of like kind of snapped out of it and said, "The heck are you doing, man? You know, you're not created for this." And I honestly say to this day, that was probably my most honest prayer, even to this day, like most raw and real. I mean, I first cursed God, and then I begged him, you know, for my life. And I said, you know, God, whatever you do, just help me, save me, because I can't save myself. And I fell asleep on my mother's living room floor that night. I remember that, you know, crying myself to sleep and just, you know, begging God for a second chance at life. I just lost everything, man, and I was just so, like, you know, people talk about rock bottom. I bounced off of rock bottom for years. I don't know that was, you know, it was just the time. I think that, you know, the stars aligned, man. You're just ready. And 2 weeks to the day was my birthday, and they approached me, sat me down, and I'd come downstairs, and I was like, I was just researching treatment centers. And I was looking at Florida and California.
He came to give you the gift of an intervention.
Yeah, I couldn't get in any place. They didn't either take my insurance, there was no beds, and I had only tried like a few, and I was kind of just like really not sure what to do. And I come downstairs, and there they are, and I'm like, oh, I've seen this TV show before. And
it was a good birthday present.
yeah, it was. It was the best birthday, worse than best day of my life. You know, I mean, I honestly... you know, I don't know. You know Mike. Mike's a big guy. You know, 6'2", state trooper.
I ran into him the other day. He's still in pretty good shape too.
Yeah, he's a great man. Mike and I go back to 5 years old.
That's awesome.
He's seen me through it all. Guys, you know, that 99 when I OD'd, he carried me into the emergency room like a child, and he sat with me for 26 hours straight. When I came out in ICU, he was right there beside me. That's who Mike is. That's the substance of a true friend. And so anyways, yeah, he stood up and tried to read a letter to me, and to see Mike break down like that in tears was really tough for me to watch, because we've been through a lot.
And he's a strong man.
He
so
is.
For a guy to get a guy that broken, you know what I mean. You
And,
know it means something.
Yeah. And then you know, they handed me letters from my daughters, and that was tough. A letter from my sister in Florida, and you know, I'm just reading, and I'm kind of quiet. I wasn't really arguing. I think they sat Mike right next to me, because I used to be a firecracker when I was, you know, little man syndrome, right? But Brian sat way across the room. I beat Brian up too many times. So
Yeah, he had enough.
Yeah, poor guy. But, you know, I kind of, at that point, I was already defeated and broken and ready, you know, and so I said, well, what's the deal? What do you want me to do? And Brian had said, you know, I got a Bedford Teen Challenge. And I said, oh, boy, Teen Challenge, because Brian is a graduate, and he'd gone through a couple of years prior, and he was a pastor now. And I was like, you know, it was undeniable. He had that peace that Matt Medeiros had 11 years prior when I bumped into Matt. He had that same look. He had that same sort of countenance, you know, where I was just like, just such a contentment in this guy now. And he was so radically different. You know, if you knew Brian prior to Teen Challenge, you understand what I mean. Brian was, you know, he was a heavy drinker.
He was an animal.
Oh, yeah, OC addict. I mean, the guy was nuts. And, you know, lovable guy always. But, boy, could he get annihilated. And to see him now, I was just in awe, and I couldn't deny that, you know. And I saw it up close, and we were, you know, his sister's married to my brother, and
So you saw it work. You saw the works.
yeah. So you know, it was powerful to me, that sort of symbol of hope and that illustration of it. And so I said, you know what, I'll do it. You know, I was not getting any luck, and I kind of looked down at the floor where I had prayed 2 weeks prior. And I remember, I'm sorry.
Man, do you, bro.
So I remember, you know, thinking, whatever you do, God, whatever door you open, you know, I'll take that.
I'll walk right through it.
I realized that here he was sending a man of God to open the door for me.
Awesome.
And so Brian was that door. And my brother, obviously my mother, and Mike had a big part in that as well. My girls, no question. A lot of people, even my ex. I mean, I thank her for finally
I
letting
mean,
me
we
go.
talked yesterday, and you brought her up a couple times how
Yeah.
you ran her through the ground, and
Yeah.
you still spoke highly of her, even.
Yeah, she's a good person. She really is. And so I went and I surrendered myself to this process and to God. And, you know, for somebody who was pretty analytical and self-righteous, you know, stubborn, prideful, arrogant, I still struggle with those things, you know, but
We all do.
at the end of the day, it was a refreshing sort of freeing feeling to just sort of surrender to something greater than me. And a couple of weeks in, I just had this amazing sort of revelation or understanding of who God was and who I was, and how grateful I was to just have this opportunity to change and another chance at life.
So this is a few weeks into Teen Challenge.
Yeah, and I was planning on leaving at 30 days. That was my deal, you know.
As Jay McMahon just finished saying, 30 days is not nearly enough.
No, 30 days, I had started changing. That was the beginning of the change. I sort of was still figuring out the nuts and bolts, and you were just kind of hitting some strides, you know. And then I called home. It was my first phone call, because they don't let you talk to your family for 30 days. You can only receive letters, which I
Yeah.
think is a great policy, because you're not whining every day.
Yeah.
You're not crying over the phone and begging people and manipulating them.
I worked in a prison, man. I see the guys doing phone bids from day one.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
So it was good for me to be separated and be by myself. I had to like meet myself. I had to meet God. I had to really sort out who I'd become, and this character, Jamie Casey, I had created for 36 years that, you know, sort of fit into this film of life. And, you know, the reality is that he was just sort of this character I had designed and created to sort of survive and to be liked and to be, you know.
Hey, man, I'm going to be honest with you. You're a different man, 100%.
Mm.
But from our interactions, you were always good to me and always a good dude. Like,
Yeah, I
like
appreciate
the
that.
core was there, that you had the good core, you know what I mean?
Yeah, a good family,
It's
you know.
just, you know, it was like you were the M&M peanut. Like, the peanut was the good, the rest of the outside chocolate was the bad, man.
Yeah.
Like, it was there.
Yeah, I mean, I meant well a lot of times. I definitely had, like, you know, I love my kids. I
Yeah.
had, like, you know, it was just brokenness, man. I was
Yeah, of
just
course.
off kilter. You know, it was like a car with 3 wheels trying to make it down the street and sparks flying everywhere, you know, and everybody was, oh, here comes Jamie, you know. But, you know, it was rough. I mean,
Saw that side, too.
yeah, I mean, who didn't? If you lived in New Bedford in those years, you know. But, you know, what ended up happening is that 30 days, you know, I realized something amazing was happening to me at that point, and I said, you know, if I go home right now, I'm going to mess this up and you know, try to fight for a marriage that was dead and try to restore something that wasn't even restorable. It was irreparable at that point. I destroyed it, and I started taking full responsibility for those things in my life and realizing that I had to, that I never had really any integrity. You know, I thought I did. You know, I had man codes. And,
Yeah, you were solid.
yeah, so I thought. You know, and the reality was I never had true integrity, and I've learned that, you know, in recovery and in life. You know, if you want to be a mature, productive human being, you know, aside from integrity, you need to be humble, you need to be teachable, and you need to love others, and you need to love yourself too. And you know, I started learning all these things for the first time, and I started having these amazing moments with God and with others, and being used and you know, to help and serve. And by about 6 months into that program, I mean, I was drastically changed already, and I could tell something was different. But you know, when you're with yourself every day, you know, C.S. Lewis says, day by day, nothing changes, but when you look back, nothing's the same.
Nothing's the same.
And that was sort of what was going on. And my mom, who would faithfully bring my girls up every week and work on that restoration with them, with me, and help support that. My mother, I mean, God bless her.
I got a soft spot for moms, man, as you probably saw with the Kevin Rosario thing.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me what you told me yesterday when we met, about when your mom first saw you there.
Well, my mother, who is a very strong woman, I have a soft spot for my mom.
As do I, trust me.
So my mom, who raised us essentially on her own, me and my brother and sister, and I was the crazy kid. My brother was nuts, but I made him look like a saint, you know.
Yeah.
My mother was she's super intelligent, and she's, you know, like I called Wendy when she was on your show, she's
Yeah.
a velvet covered brick, you know. She's strong but soft. And you know, for years she watched me in my misery, and she watched me fail, and she watched me struggle and try, and she always encouraged, never turned her back on me. You know, it was like, you know, my sanctuary, you know. And I'll never forget when you know, she's a faithful person, my mother. She's not a church person. she had some bad experiences as a kid, and that's fine. And
Faith and religion is different sometimes.
faith and religion are two totally different things.
People don't realize that.
Yeah, it's about a relationship with God, and so my mom has that, and I'll never forget. 6 months in, she came in, and there was just she was different. She was tearing up, and my mom's not a crier. She's not. She's tough, and but she's sensitive at the same time. And I kind of thought something really wrong was happening, like something really bad happened or something. And I can remember asking her, what's the matter? Everything all right? And she kind of looked at me, and it was like, I've waited 22 years, prayed for this to meet my son, And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh gosh, that's powerful. And I mean, it sunk my stomach, At that point, it was almost like you realize like what God's done in my life and what this hard work and this surrender.
It's like that door open, man, I'm here. I made it.
So she kind of at that point was like, if you're ready to come home. And I was like, I'm not. I mean, there's still some work to be done here. And
how far into you was that point?
That was at 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah. And I stuck around, and I said, I'm going to wait until until God makes it obvious, until things get to the point where I have to leave here. And that was kind of how I handled it, day by day, and just kept pressing in and kept growing and taking advantage of what Teen Challenge offers. Teen Challenge is a very unique program. It's not just a drug rehab. It's kind of it's a discipleship program. It's a faith-based ministry that sort of they don't allow smoking and medications and things like that. And there's a sort of take responsibility for your action kind of mentality where you work every day, you earn your keep, and you clean up after yourself, and you learn to just live in structure and by rules. And most people who are caught up in addiction
have lived on their own rules.
Yeah, these things aren't in place, and so it's really good. But there's a lot of amazing bonds that happen in that. A lot of people and everybody that's in that place has been through that program, so they've all been a day one student, and they all understand what you're going through at all times, whether they've been there for 37 years or 37 minutes. They all have that in common, and so it was powerful. I mean, it was actually exactly what I thought. Now know actually that church should be is these relationships, that's where the power is in all of this, is that in community is where we're actually transformed. Brian and I, we use that term quite a bit, is Pastor Jackie Strada from Teen Challenge had sent Brian a card, and this term that she used was, you keep loving people back to life, and essentially that's what we're supposed to do. And I think that's what happened to me there, is I got loved back to life.
I try to tell people that all the time, like, I went through a point, Jamie, where, I was on that side, like, man, let them kill themselves.
Yeah.
And it was irresponsible of me, and short-sighted of me, and I've asked for forgiveness for thinking like that, because, just, I may not have vocalized it as much, but, the good man upstairs does know what you think, too, as far as I'm concerned. Right. And I have friends that, like, have family members that just, like, let them go. Like, dude, I can't. I can't see a dog hurt, never mind.
Right.
And when an addict is out there, he's hurt.
That's right.
People don't realize that. Like, and that right there, what you just said, love them back. Like, dude, if you got family members, like, Jay brought it up, like, there's not a person that isn't affected by this. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, Muslim, Christian, whatever you may be. Yeah. It comes and affects you, man. And it's going to, one part of addiction in this opioid crisis is going to affect you, whether something gets stolen from you, or whether somebody dies that you love, or whether you end up with the addiction, And I try to tell people that, like, there's no socioeconomic breakdown of who gets what. Like, nowadays, it's just crazy. And you do have to love everybody, and I went over scripture with you yesterday a little bit, and like how like your main job in life is to love, like that's what you're here to do. Yeah. And people that just don't get it, just like and like me, like I finally saw the light, where I'm like, man, that's not how you treat things. And now that I see people that have been successful in recovery, like yourself, like a Kevin Rosario that was on. Yeah. He's a madman too, Yeah. And
he's a good man.
He had family that just kept loving him and loving him and loving him and loving him, and that's what you just do. You just don't throw away life.
That's right.
You don't throw away family. It's
sacred.
It is, man. Your time here is short because eternity's forever, and people don't realize that. But even though it's short, like it's sacred, you know?
Yeah, sure, it's a gift. I mean, there's no question that, you know, I always say, and it's an old saying, but I mean, the idea is, and I you know, on Wednesday nights, I lead a group of amazing people at the church, and you know, one of the things I always try to reiterate and remind people is that you're not just a human being trying to have a spiritual experience. You're a spiritual being having a human experience. You know, it's just temporary, you know, but we're eternal in that sense. And so we have to really embrace that and make the most of this little ride on this spinning ball of dirt, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you know, I guess to wrap up where I was, I ended up heading home, and when I got home...
How long was it when you went home?
It's almost a year. It was about 11 months, which to me is insane, you know, thinking about it now. And even, gosh, that first day, I didn't think I was going to make it through night number one. Everybody, while I walked in, everybody just kept hugging me and you know, praying over me, and I was kind of like, this is creepy, man. But, you know, it's just something powerful there, the bonds and the relationships, and it made such an impact in my life, and what an amazing ministry it is, and it's still doing great work, and they're growing, and they're making a huge impact in our community.
We're going to talk about that because Christian actually came forward yesterday with some good news.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But
yeah, he's going to try. I know he is. You know, we talked about it, and.
But yeah, so I got home. I hit the ground running. I got tied into a church. You know, in the past, I'd always thought, okay, once you get clean, the first thing you do is you get a job, and then you get yourself healthy, and then you know you try to get your relationships in order, and then you whatever, and then go to the gym and all this stuff, and then maybe add some God to your life, get to church, because that's good, you know. No. And what I learned this time was to do the opposite, was to make God the center of my life, and then to sort of allow Him to sort of change my, you know, my emotional and psychological status. I became very, you know, I found that peace, I found that joy, and then in turn I got healthier physically, and then my relationships got better, and then people were actually asking me to work for them. And so jobs, you know, begin to come, and
you said something yesterday that was amazing.
Which one?
You said a few things yesterday that you've never applied for a job since walking out of it.
Yeah, well, I've applied. The ones I've worked at, I didn't apply for, which is just weird. Like the way it happened was it was almost like my path's been mapped out for me, you know, and that's how I look at it. You know, I've just stayed faithful. You know, I've really learned to trust God. Like, and I know that sounds foreign to a lot of people, but you know, like, you know, He's been faithful to me. I mean, I came home with nothing. I mean, I literally was starting over from scratch. I had to move into my mother's house at 37 years old, and you know, it's not my proudest moment, right? But you know, at that time, I was grateful. I had a place to go.
She was grateful that you were there.
Yeah, and for her to let me in was a huge milestone, and go from there. But you know, it was 6 months later where I moved out, and then you know, I had, you know, I didn't really want to date. I just wanted to be a good dad, and I wanted to just, you know, continue this faith walk and just bring that hope and freedom to other people. And so I was just like a madman, just trying to get the message out to as many people as possible, and to share my story as often as possible, and say, because people remembered me. It was less than a year later. It was like, you know, that dude was crazy. You know.
Now, talk about going out there with the Bibles and the backpacks. Like.
Yeah, we used to pack a backpack and put, you know, bottles of water and maybe some granola bars or something like that, and you know, just kind of stop all the way up Acushnet Avenue, North Front, under the overpasses, and just talk to whoever would listen to me, and just like, you know, not like some crazy preacher, man. I would just talk about my story.
I
would share, like, you know, that I was an addict, and that I had, you know, battled for over 20 years with drugs and alcohol, and, you know, all the damage that I'd done, but that I had hope now, and that I had a new life now, and what God was doing in my life, and also what community can do, and what, you know, coming together can do, and trying to invite people in, and started a ministry through that. And you know, through that ministry, we ended up reaching a lot of people, you know, and people rallied around that, and they've really supported me tremendously through all of this. And I mean, even now, I still wonder why everybody keeps supporting me, but you know, I'm good. I mean, I'll keep running.
Man, you're inspiring, and I'll tell you that right now. Like, you're the type of dude that'll make you want to do good stuff. Like, you know, there's those type of guys that will make you want to run through a wall.
Yeah.
You're one of them. You know, you have that gift.
Don't do that, man.
No, I won't. Trust me, I'm getting old. I actually had defensive tactics yesterday. I'm an instructor for the court, and I had it yesterday.
Oh, gosh.
Man, I woke up this morning and I can't even
Yeah, don't
move.
get up on my behalf. But yeah, so it was interesting. You know, you get some crazy looks when you're on the street. You know, and you know, people are kind of looking at you sideways. And a lot of people still recognize me and knew me, whether it was people I'd ran with or even sold drugs to, or that I had bar rooms that I'd hung out in, and I didn't care where I went. You know. And that's where the ministry started, and that's where everything, it was really, we started a Celebrate Recovery group, faith-based 12 steps, and Brian was really gracious. He took me under his wing and he taught me how to lead and how to sort of, you know, bring people together and to go through these curriculums and teach. And so that was a big help. And, you know, in this journey, I mean, what's ended up happening is like you said, there's different seasons and different jobs. And I kept thinking, like, why did I end up here? Why am I working at a credit union? Why am I working in property management? And I thought, you know, they all accommodated me at that specific season as I was going through school, as I was learning skills through these things, and they've all come back to be valuable in what I'm doing now. Sweet. You know? Yeah. It was in April of this past year, of 2017, where Carl Alves owns PAACA. I had met Carl over the past couple of years. We sit on the opioid task force together, you know, I was actually their speaker, a keynote at their overdose awareness night last year. And so we knew each other, and I'm very friendly with Reverend Lima, who's another amazing guy in the community who's doing a lot of stuff. And so, you know, I met them and Connie Rocha Mimoso from Seven Hills and all these folks, and I started making these like really great connections in the community. And I was like, you know, just to be rubbing elbows with all these folks. You know, Edwin's another one that you were talking about earlier. You know, all these folks who are doing just great stuff around here. And you know, Carl kind of had a conversation with me about the possibility of coming, because Brenda Souza, who had been with PAACA for 18 years, my predecessor, she did some amazing work there. You know, it's
a tough job.
It is. It's rewarding. It's challenging. I love it. I mean, I love what I'm doing right now. You know, you know, again, Carl approached me on this, and I wasn't sure what to expect. I didn't even know what PAACA did, and I'll explain that in a minute. But what really was I was in awe of was that somebody actually wanted me to come in and direct and manage to that degree. You know, I was in property management. You know, I've managed people and I've been in supervision, but this is on a new level because it was doing what I loved. It was my heart, you know, in my city. And I mean, I love New Bedford, man. You know, this is my town. I took from this town. You know what I mean? For years, I was part of the problem.
You were drained on it, and now you're filling it back up.
Yeah. So I owe this city, and I'm giving back. And so, you know, Carl just kind of sat down and mapped it out for me, and I accepted the job. I started on May 1, and the first thing I did, I went through and did a lot of analyzing and sort of some due diligence, and you know, did a SWOT analysis and all that stuff. But I basically, you know, looked at what we did well, what we didn't do well, what we were doing, what we weren't doing, what we should be doing, you know, and all those things. Kind of looked at, you know, PAACA's reputation and some of the tarnish that was on it, just from, you know, listen, he deals with that population, you know, it's going to happen.
It comes naturally.
Yeah, and that's the risk, and again, that's what you do. You throw yourself in front of the train. But, you know, I'll be honest, all I really knew was that they did AA and NA meetings there, and I knew that they had a housing program, because it was a good friend of mine who was part of our ministry, had gone through it, and I'd seen him do amazing things through that program. So I went there, I walked around with Carl, and he showed me everything, and we talked, and we met a couple of times, and you know, I started hearing about the clothing room. I started hearing, you know, how they do GED prep and employment readiness and placement, and you know, how our youth services with Terry Belleville, she oversees the youth court, and my daughter had been part of that youth court at New Bedford Voc, and she loved it. And Pastor Jose Nieves, who is a pastor at Thy Kingdom Come, is also one of the caseworkers and part of the youth court process. And you know, I started hearing all these things, and I'm like, wow, this step-up housing program, we got 15 units, we got 35 clients who are chronically homeless, you know what I mean, who are now in housing, permanent housing, who are getting their lives together with a case management.
So you're providing food, clothing, education, employment, housing.
Yeah.
It's pretty much
with youth. Yeah.
All, actually, the big thing is the youth, which you told me that you were really, really trying to expand upon.
Yeah, there's a lot happening. I mean, so we, you know, right now there's as part of the opioid task force, because everything's overlapping. We're a nonprofit, and so you know, again,
you got to try to grab as much help as you can.
Partnerships.
Why don't you actually school quickly, 30 seconds on what is the opioid task force?
So it's the Greater New Bedford Opioid Task Force, kind of birthed through Sergeant Joe Cadero and Mike Rocha, Dr. Mike Rocha. Mike and I actually go back to Little League days. We grew up in the same neighborhood. So.
People don't realize Mike is everywhere.
Yeah, he is.
I told him the other day, I'm like, man, how many hours in your day? Because there's only 24 in mine.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 of him.
Yeah.
Same thing with Carl, David, Connie. They're everywhere. They're the hardest working people I know, you know, and honestly, they're committed to this. You know what I mean? And that's what I appreciate is when you're working with people like this, you know, and you partner with these people, you get to see like that there's a passion behind all this work.
Yeah.
And you know, I love Chief Cadero. He's such a great guy, you know, and I love what he brings to the table, you know, and so, you know, they started this thing, it was birthed through their sort of ideas, like, listen, you know, we got to do something. There's a crisis here.
Yeah.
And Mike had reached out to me a couple of months prior and said, hey, I've got some ideas, and this is what they're doing at Mass General Hospital, and this is what's happening here. And he really just was like, we got to make something happen. And, you know, I love it. He can get a little overzealous and excited. That excitement, again, he gets people together and he makes things happen.
Everything.
Yeah, he does. Even when he's playing the trombone, you know? But, you know, it was great because to just be sitting at the table, I'm looking around and it's like, you know, administrators and doctors and the chief of police and the DA's office and the school department and, you know, all these folks and
Jamie Casey.
I'm like, what am I doing here, you know? But, you know, I always laugh and I always say, well, I'm your research monkey, you know what I mean? But, you know, I've been there, I've done that, and so whatever I can bring to the table.
What do you guys do now, that big collaborative?
So there's a lot happening. We just started a prevention thing. We're going to be going into elementaries and the middle schools with that. We do a lot. We do the drop-in center, which the drop-in center was actually going on tonight downtown at Mercy Mills location. Those are great because Mobile Ministries comes with a truck, and so we try to get as many people help. We get a bunch of providers together on one night a month. You know, so tonight, you know, you have a bunch of people show up from like Clean Slate, High Point, Seven Hills, PAACA, Teen Challenge, Greater New Bedford Community Health Center, Learn to Cope, all these different agencies coming together in one room and then hitting the community that's in need. And so we're trying to draw them in, you know, block off the street, bring the Mobile Ministries truck, and then let them come in. Now, you know, you don't necessarily have to be in a struggle at that moment, but like you said, it hits everybody. So parents will come in for help, you know, to know what's out there, get educated, and just, you know, get some information. Make those connections so that way when they're ready to move, then they have the resources and the help. And that's really what it is education, preparedness, and then obviously, you know, intervention if possible and needed. So that's another great thing that we're doing right now. And then you have also the opioid task force does a ride-along thing that I've been really blessed to be part of. Man.
Yeah, I tried to get you on weeks ago, but you were too busy with that.
Yeah, well, you know, I'll tell you, it's great. What we do is BUR actually did a really great radio show on this NPR radio. WBUR out of Boston followed us around one day, and I'll tell you, you know, just to kind of watch the show after because you know when you're in it, you don't really see it.
You don't see it.
To see the perspective and like, you know, what's been happening and all the numbers and stuff. 'Cause I just go out and just do what I do. I mean, put me in front of somebody and I'm going to talk, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, there was this opportunity that came up. Edwin was actually Cartagena was the one who he was already doing the ride-alongs at that time through Seven Hills, and he had invited me. He's like, hey man, we're looking to get some chaplains in here. Reverend Leem is looking for people, and I thought of you, and I was like, yeah man, I'm in, you know.
Yeah, of course.
And so, you know, it's going on a couple of years now, and you know, what we do is within about a week, within a few days, hopefully, and we're actually doing it more and more. It started off, we were only doing a couple of days a week, and Mondays and Fridays we'd go out, and if you had overdosed that week, then a police officer, you know, in plain clothes in an unmarked car with somebody from like Seven Hills or another local agency, High Point, you know, someone would send a recovery coach with a chaplain. And I'm kind of a hybrid, which is great because I go as a chaplain and I also work in the field, so it's great that, you know, I'm in recovery. And we go to these houses and we knock on their doors, you know, so it's really, at first, I think some people are a little like, okay, not sure what to expect. You get a cop there who identifies, I'm with New Bedford Police. We're trying to like, you know, not be so in your face with that. It's more like, hey, outreach team, you know, we try to just meet people where they're at in an unthreatening way and just let them know we're here to help. We're here because we care. We want to make sure that you're okay. how can we help you? You know, what are your needs? And then we wait and we play off of the person, you know. So you know, sometimes they connect with the cop more than they connect with me or the
Well, it's a
recovery
team.
coach. So we back off.
Yeah, it's a team.
And that's it, you know, like whoever's connecting with that person, that's the biggest, the biggest hope. And we were one of the first, the reason that WBUI did the story was because we were one of the first to implement the chaplains into those ride-alongs. A lot of other towns are doing the ride-alongs, but not with a chaplain, the faith community. So that was an added feature that we had, if you will. And I think that rounded us, you know, it made us more successful. And I've seen some great things happen through there. I've helped people get into treatment. I've watched people successfully move into this process, you know, through that. Some of them come to our church and our group, and some come to PAACA and they volunteer now, and I'm just blown away by that, you know.
That's the seed you planted out there.
That's what the team's doing.
So now, we talked about the functions of PAACA, but you're also starting a new program called Celebrate Recovery.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's near and dear to you because it's something that saved you, basically, in many ways.
Yeah, so Celebrate Recovery is a faith-based 12-step program. We just started that group on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock at PAACA, and we've had a great turnout. We've had a great response. You know, again, we want to offer more at PAACA. We want to sort of hit the areas we're not, and I've seen it be so successful, and that's sort of my sweet spot, so why not offer it if I'm there as a resource, you know?
You're the face of it. You are.
Well, we that was, like I said, Brian had kind of put me in that position, and that was what I was taught, was in a Celebrate Recovery setting. So it definitely is near and dear to me, and it means a lot that I can get to do this again and again, especially in my place of employment. I mean, that's not, you know, not too many people can say that, you know, especially in the faith community when you're bivocational, you know. But yeah, that's happening, and that's going really well. You know, we're hoping to obviously plant more of those. I'm trying to raise up some leaders within that group who are capable of leading their own Celebrate
in
Recovery.
other spots.
Yeah, I just plant them all over the place, you know, because there aren't enough 12-step recovery groups and not enough faith-based recovery groups, and so, you know, these things are proven to work because of the community. Again, it goes back to loving people back to life. You know,
absolutely,
relationships are key, man.
Now, one thing I want to touch upon, I noticed a lot of your staff yesterday, and you know, were people like that are in recovery as well, like, and they're a lot of them were volunteers.
Yeah, sure.
And they're giving back like that. I mean, that's amazing that you staff a facility that does what you do. I mean, you're going from jobs, GED, New Directions, food pantry, transportation fleet, which blew my mind. Your transportation fleet is out and about 7 days a week, 7 a.m. and on, and that's it. And they're just going. The youth services you guys deal with, the youth court, and a lot of that's staffed by volunteers who are in recovery, people giving back.
Yeah, that's right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and that blesses me too. I mean, I you know, they keep me going. I'm so impressed with people who are just giving their time, you know, for nothing more in return other than to help the next person. We have, you know, we've been very fortunate to sort of recruit a bunch of really solid volunteers too. You know, you know, we have to do it with a lot of volunteers because, again, we're a nonprofit. The funding, you know, we're all chasing grants, and I always, you know, I always say it's like, you know, you got these grants, these pieces of cheese, and you know, a bunch of mice trying to get to this piece of cheese, and the mice multiply, and the cheese just keeps getting eaten, you know, and so we're trying to think outside of the box, and obviously volunteers are a start, but you know, you gotta you got to think of other ways to have a budget and to increase your budget and to obviously, you know, be more effective and to grow, and especially with a growing need. So we just started and I know you wanted to talk about this, so I'll just kind of go into that.
Well, we're talking about funding, and before you talk about that, I just want to, I spent 2 hours yesterday there with you, and we took about a 20-minute tour of the facility. I saw a good section, a very good section, and a section on the third floor that needs all kinds of money. We're dealing with something that's a huge crisis in New Bedford. It's a huge black eye in New Bedford. The opioid crisis is a black eye in New Bedford.
Yeah, sure.
PAACA is like, when you think of, I'm just going to come out and say it, like how a lot of the viewers will look at it. If you think about drug addicts in New Bedford, and you're like, oh man, Route 18 at the bottom, PAACA.
Yeah.
So why aren't we throwing money at PAACA and making it a place where we can actually fix
Yeah,
people?
sure.
I saw a lot of the ideas you had. That second floor, what a great idea of a holding facility to get people treatment. And then the third floor. I actually drove by today. I was taking a work crew out from the correction center in Dartmouth.
Yeah.
And I said, hey man, I was there yesterday. Cause someone said, oh, PAACA. And I said, and on the third floor, they're looking to do like an internet cafe.
Yeah.
For people in recovery, so they can
Yeah.
do their homework, so they can, get the internet, and they're like, wow, that's a great idea,
Yeah.
But none of this comes for free.
Yeah, I have a ton of ideas, and Carl is a patient man. He's got me bridled and a little, and he's going to keep me moving, slowing down a little bit and moving in the right directions. But yeah, I mean, I have a ton of visions for that building, a bunch of great ideas that
ideas
I need manpower for, and also we need funding for. But
you sent me an email, and it's a great fundraiser. And the point of what I was making was, it's our community. It's a bad. We're having a bad crisis right now. So why not be part of the solution?
Right. Sure.
And with everything, I tell everybody, in politics, it takes money, and in recovery, it takes money too.
That's right.
What is this program that you're trying to put together to raise funds to get PAACA to where it needs to be?
So what we're trying to do is again, we understand as a community that we have a problem, and as you said, it touches everybody. Addiction is a community crisis. It's a national crisis. It's a global crisis, especially with what we have going on right now. It's killing people, and so I've been trying to challenge the community to get more involved. Not everybody can do everything, but everybody can do something. So the idea is like, listen, we figured out this monthly sponsorship program where, and it's nothing new. Other places do it. Teen Challenge does it. But the idea is this is right here in New Bedford. This is a chance to sow into sort of, an organization, a grassroots organization that is literally out there at the front lines dealing with the worst of the worst situations.
Yes.
We deal with very difficult situations on a daily basis. Hundreds of intakes we have every year. We're helping people get into detox off the street. We're transporting them to detox. As you said, we have a transportation thing going on. There's a lot. We just had a great golf tournament that helped us to buy another vehicle for detox transport. But we're still way behind the eight ball. So it's one of these things where if we can get everybody to do a little bit, 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks, $1,000 a month, whatever's in your budget, right? On a recurring payment plan. Now we have a budget we can start building off of. If we, a little bit at a time, and you get it all together, enough people, you can start hiring more caseworkers. You can, start doing more as far as the facility goes. I have all these crazy ideas with the building. There's also some other ideas of or a hope one day to build out on that building, or to refurbish that first floor and have a commercial kitchen, so we could do something like what Mercy Mills has been doing in the North End. And so we do have a lot of these ideas, but it becomes pipe dreams until you have some solid funding and something to build off of. So I've been challenging everybody and asking everybody, hey, please, consider partnering with us. Consider a $20 a month, or a $30 a month recurring payment, and that's going to something positive. We don't make a lot of money, so nobody's getting rich off it. Nobody's looking for a raise. We're just looking to make a bigger difference, and that's really all this is. And I can say that, like you said, you saw all the volunteers. We want to use this money as wisely as possible, and so it's a big thing. We need this right now, and really just kind of a call to action to the community. It's like, okay, you see the problem, the problem, you're affected by the problem, let's make an impact on the problem.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Now you see why I set it up and cut it like this, because now next week Josh is going to cut this segment.
Yeah.
And please help PAACA, and we're going to attach your link that you sent me to it.
Yeah.
And that's it now.
Good idea.
I'm starting to learn the show stuff. I don't know how the hell I got on here. I'm still trying to I still scratch my head and say, I got a show.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Speaking of money, we have a lot of politicians in the area that have access to grants, that have access to funds. We have an attorney general, as you know, we have a candidate run against them that has a budget to help programs like you.
Sure.
An outreach budget. The mayor's office now has a community budget, I think, and obviously Senator Montigny and Representative Cabral also have ways of getting money and funds to you. Have you reached out to them and how, you know?
I mean, I'd love to have some conversations with them at some point. You know, as I said, I have been there for less than a year, and so right now I'm just really trying to clean up and rebrand and refurbish what we have, and you know, clean up our image a little bit as what PAACA is, and let people know who we are. You got to brand ourselves. We got to get everybody out.
Kind of shine the sneaker at the moment.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Get in front of people and let them know what we are and what we're doing. And I don't think a lot of people know. And that's, you know, again, thank you for allowing me to do that, because I think once people start to realize how much we are doing and how many people come through our doors every year, every day, then they'll start to understand that there's a need and that we provide a valuable resource to the community.
Absolutely.
And you know, I'd love for these guys, and you know, I know Mark Montigny. He's a good man. You know, I've known Mark for years, and he's always been very, you know, good to me. And again, I'd love to have a conversation with him at some point and say, hey man, come see what we're doing here, you know, and how can you help, or point us in the right direction, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, I know he's got a lot on his plate, and I don't envy anybody in politics, to be honest with you. It's not my cup of tea.
Well, the Route 18 plan, if you look, millions was spent on both sides of where PAACA is right now. Millions and millions of dollars. Cobblestones and exits, and here's the entrance to our fabulous north end, and here's PAACA on the left.
Yeah.
That should be part of the beautification of that area, of that district, of the city, you know?
Sure.
And hopefully they see that vision like you do, you know what I mean? Because they have the power and the purse strings to make that happen, you know? And I'm sure these guys are kind of sensible. Hopefully they still have it in them. They've been in there for a while to help out, you know, an organization like yours. I just want to go over some of the messages, Jamie. We're about... coming close to an hour into our interview right now.
No kidding, huh?
Yeah.
See what happens when you get a politician and a preacher on in the same segment.
Oh, him, yeah. I was like, I'm not a politician, dude. I'm going to go through like the 6 million I love you, Jamies, because each one of them means something. You've probably touched their heart, and that's why they're doing this, you know? My man Corey Pina, we all know that superstar.
Yeah, it's a good man right there.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Corey and I can battle. But I'll tell you what, I can call that kid immediately, him or Kevin, if I need someone help for bed or something, they've done it. And their heart's in the right place, and the game's in the right place.
Soldiers, man.
Matt DeRoches, Melissa Quinn, these are all thank yous and I love yous and you're the best. Walter Pyers, Lynn Caterl, sorry if I butchered Caterl, yeah. Kimberly Shell, Walter Pyers again, Turgeon's awesome. Shout out to Mike Turgeon. He's my buddy too, he's a good guy, good man right there.
Yeah.
Lisa Valente, Borges Valente, God bless you. Richard Vieira, Connie Mimoso, you're an amazing person. Lance Brightman brings up a good point about people being, you know, very, and that's part of why I'm doing this on the show. I told you a few weeks ago that I thought the show was going to be about slaying politicians. And then once I did that domestic violence show and we helped some people, like a light just clicked.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this is
help people.
This is your platform. You can have your ministry right here every Thursday by helping at least a couple people a week. And Lance hits the nail on the head about a lot. Unfortunately, people can be ignorant to the many that are struggling.
Yeah.
You know,
stigma.
Keep at it, brother. And Lance is a great dude. I've known Lance for 20 years now. When I met him at the sheriff's department. He's always been a good guy. I love Lance. He's a good dude.
Lance is a good man.
Josh Smith, what's up, Jamie? Tiffany Fonseca, we are so proud of you. You might know this one. Stacy Casey, I can't say enough. I'm so proud of you, honey. Stephanie Fries, big heart. Chad Pina, Sean Fitzgerald joined in. Sean's a good dude. I know he does a lot of work with you over there.
Sean's doing a lot with us at PAACA right now. He's helped us with the golf tournament and our Thanksgiving dinner that we just did for all the homeless and the guys in the houses and men and women that are nowhere to go.
I tell everybody, man, it's good to do good and to be recognized for doing good. Some people just do good to be recognized, and some people don't like to be recognized. But I think everyone that does should get that, because even if it's what you were looking for, that you did that good deed just to be recognized, you might have inspired somebody to do a good deed that doesn't want to be recognized. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I give everybody what they're
I have a hard time with that. I'll be honest with you. I always think, the scripture that says those who exalt themselves will be humble, but those who humble themselves will be exalted. And I get that. I just definitely, I do this because of what I did before and because of who my God is. And that's, this is what we do. We let our light shine, man.
Father Stan from OLOA back in the day, God rest his soul, when I was attending OLOA, and I was actually a Eucharistic minister there while I was still attending Catholic church, used to say, and there they are, the people who play the trumpet before the deeds.
Yeah.
You know, and but you know what? It's good to play the trumpet because even if it inspires somebody to do good, a good deed was done. That's the way I look at it. You know, whatever it takes, by all means necessary, let's get it done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's keep going. Nicole Ingham, good for you. You know, John Silva, and then Lance brings up another point. There are a lot more functioning addicts out there than we realize.
Sure.
Guys that I used to work with. Gosh, I worked with you and you were doing it back then. You know what I mean? People need to understand that, not be so ignorant that to this problem that affects more than likely someone you know.
Yeah.
Which we talked about. You know, there are people out there that you talk to every day that you do not know are struggling with drugs.
Yeah.
And Kevin Rosario brought something up, and now that you deal with Voc, and this just popped in my head, this was an awesome idea, and he did this out in the Cape, and I think that would be huge if we did this here. In high school, your senior, junior year, what's the most important thing at the end of the year is the prom, right? The district attorney's office out there, along with Kevin, did this. If you wanted to pick up your prom tickets, and they held it at a time where parents and their kids could go, your parent or guardian, as well as yourself, had to attend this conference type thing in the auditorium where Kevin came on, the DA came on, and explained all the signs of opioid use and Kevin's story.
Yeah.
And Kevin will consume you because he's like that, rah, you know, and Kevin can sell you anything, you know, he's that guy. And man, what a wonderful idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
you hold the kids hostage for something they want, you know, and you hold the parents hostage because there are what just popped in my head was functioning people. People are children too.
Yeah.
Your child may be functioning right now, but may be dependent on drugs.
Sure.
So you could educate these parents by doing a program like this, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something you can work on with Reverend Leamer over at Voc, you know, and maybe start it there and then work itself out into the public school system. Like
we actually. Again, I told you about the opioid task force, how we're working on some prevention stuff, and Mike Roach has got some a program that he's pulled down that, you know, it's a reward system that he wants to start implementing, and I don't know much about it yet, so I don't want to speak too much to it, but, you know, we were just, Terry Beliveau, who's our youth director, and I were just at Voc the other day with Henry Bousquet and some of his students who want to, I was so inspired by these kids, you know, they're 15, 16-year-old kids in high school who want to start a group for kids who are children of addicts and kids who are struggling with addiction or just want an anonymous place to go for some support and some education and to bring in speakers. And I thought, man, these kids are really, you know, getting it, you know, they want to make a difference with their peers. And so those things are happening. And I think that the more this stigma is lifted, like, listen, man, you know, it's going to impact you, like you said, on one way or another. So you can do nothing, you can ignore this, or you can do something to be part of this. Yeah. And so we're starting to see even the youth now starting to step up. You know,
that's a good thing because we also touched upon this yesterday. It's in your genes to be an addict, or it's in your upbringing to be an addict. Environment or genetics.
Yeah, predisposed.
You know, you're being predisposed in your genetics. But what I don't want to get into that argument at all. Sure. The reason why I bring it up is because there aren't really many programs for the children affected by their parents being addicts. Yeah. And this may stop that cycle from continuing onto onto the offspring of addicts.
Sure. I mean, I know like High Point does stuff, and they do stuff for youth, 17 and under. They have the Castle program, things like that. And I know that, you know, again, you know, we talked about DARE, right? When we were growing up, there was DARE.
I don't even remember one thing from DARE.
I don't either. I just remember
Trooper Bro, if you're out there watching, you know I'm a friend of yours, Diane, and I love you to death. You even put my car seats in for my kids. I didn't learn a thing from DARE. I'm going to tell you right now.
Well, you know, again, as this evolves, as the culture and the drug culture and addiction culture evolves, I think what we need to do is evolve with it. You know, you're not gonna beat it with the old mentalities.
No, as a matter of fact, I used to wear my DARE shirt and smoke bones. Like, you know what I mean? And thought it was cool when I was a kid. Like, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And you are evolving, and you are, you know, and you're bringing one of the oldest. Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you.
You know, the word of the Lord is the word of the Lord since the beginning of man.
Yeah, I always say, you know,
and you're bringing the old school.
It's timeless, man. There's certain principles in there that are undeniable. You know, the golden rule. You know, I mean, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. You know, everybody. Again, it's, you know, when I tell people I'm not the most religious guy, you know, I'm not. pastor means servant, shepherd. It means, minister is to serve people and to lead people. And the idea is that, to be the greatest servant is to be the greatest leader, and that was taught to us. And it wasn't about, not to get too biblical on you, but, when you read the Gospels and you see what Jesus came and said, he pointed out the religious people, he called them out, and he says, it's not about how big your hat is, you know what I mean? I don't care about your image, I don't care about your big temples. He goes, the most important things is to love God and to love others.
Yes.
And, the laws hang on all of that, and so the idea is if you can't get that right, then keep your religion to yourself, because you're missing the whole point of humanity and what God created us to be.
Yeah, touched upon that earlier when I said, just love and continue to love, and you said the same thing. And I actually shared with you yesterday, once I did this whole, decided let's go forward with this Puerto Rico thing, we went into, at my church, 2 Corinthians 9 and 10, where we discussed giving and giving to others and planting those seeds, because you'll get more seeds back.
That's right.
And
reap what we sow, man.
And it's a wonderful thing that you're doing, and you've touched many people, as evident by your growing stature in the community.
Yeah. Well.
And when you do the right thing, it seems that, and you help people, it seems like that's the recipe for success around here. And I noticed that now a lot through this show. I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot from people like you, Kevin, and others, that the more I give, the more fulfilling my heart is.
Yeah.
And the more I want to help. You know what I mean? It's crazy. It's so contagious. It's like,
It's what we were created to do, though.
And to love others in it.
Yeah.
And I hope to meet someone like you every single day in this area, because if everybody took the negativity out of their daily lives and just said, you know what, I'm going to do one positive thing for somebody today. Or I'm going to, be kind to someone today. One of the main things I tell my son every day is, hey, man, be kind.
Yeah, it's great religion right there.
And the world will be a better place, and it'll help others, and be compassionate for others. That's the main point. That compassion saved you. Guys like Mike Turgeon had compassion for you. Brian had compassion for you. Your mother did, because a lot of moms kind of just give up on their kids. And look what you're doing now. Their compassion built you to the man that you are right now. Through Christ. And
yeah, I mean, it's definitely about community, man. We got to build each other up. We got to support each other. We got to walk with each other at the worst times, not just the best times. And remember that it's not about us. And like you said, these platforms. I get uncomfortable. I squirm. It's not about me. Trust me, I know who I really am.
Oh, I hate this.
I always think, man, if people really knew how I was, the struggles I have on a daily basis, I just want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem anymore. Again, the platform was given to me. I didn't earn it, and so I'm just going to do what I can with what I have in the now, and it could all be gone tomorrow, and that's fine too, man. But I just don't want to, I just want to be able to say I didn't waste that moment, So, yeah. Be present, man. Be present.
Past the next 30 seconds of yours, Jamie, because we're way past our bedtime.
Yeah, we are. Gosh, you kidding me? I'm already.
And I still got poor Jay out there to go talk to. He's been waiting the whole time. He was a good guest, and usually they leave by now.
Yeah.
Jay's sticking around. I have a feeling he wants to talk to us about some stuff.
Yeah.
The camera's yours. The mic's yours. What do you want to say, Jamie?
Don't give up hope. It's easy to give up on people. It's easy to give up on yourself. When it gets tough, but the breakthroughs are on the other side of those challenges, and there are people like me, like Kevin Rosario's and the Corey Pinas and the Brian Dubies, and there's so many. I mean, I could go down a list. I guarantee you they watch this broadcast because they know, and they've been there with me, and so there's so many examples out there of hope and people who have endured, and they're the proof of a community and the power of relationships and the power of God. And so, the resources are out there. There's hope, man. Don't give up hope. And this city was once the city that lit the world. Through whale oil and all that. And I think we can do that again. I think that's what we need to do. Is that, in the darkest times, that's when the light shines the brightest. And I think this is our opportunity to really rise up and to set the tone nationally. I don't see why we can't. Spark, a fire is always started by a spark, a simple spark, and let New Bedford be that spark,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Jamie. Before I forget, someone that needs to get credit for something and that's always involved in the community, Christian Farland.
Yeah.
Hope you're enjoying Florida, brother. Christian Farland is trying to get Teen Challenge into New Bedford.
Yeah, he reached out the other day, and you know, I love Christian, man. I think I've known Christian since he was a kid. You know,
Mr. I Love New Bedford.
Yeah, he is a good dude, man, and he does a lot for this community, and a lot. You know, he's another one who's an unsung hero. He definitely does a lot more than people even realize. And he did. He said something about wanting, you know, as a property that he wants to bring Teen Challenge to New Bedford because he sees the value.
He put it on his Facebook yesterday.
Yeah, he sees the value of the program. He sees the power of it, and he's seen it transform lives like mine. And you know, I don't know, you know, if it would be, you know, obviously we can't just throw around the name Teen Challenge because they have their own brand and their own plan and vision, but you know, I think the reality of what he's saying is something like that would be of huge value to this city, and we, you know, him wanting to bring something like that to this area is a great thing. You know, whether
there's not enough of that.
No, like a strong transition program, and there are some good houses out there. Don't get me wrong. I've been working with you know, Armin over at Zero Tolerance and Billy Whaling, who has Flipside, and they, you know, guys at Harmony House. I mean, they're doing some good things in this community, but there's far and few between. We need more. We need again, we need the housing. We need the transition. Long-term treatment is where success is had, and I think, you know, Jay touched on it too. Is that 30 days is definitely not enough. You know, statistically, it's proven that the longer you stay in treatment, the greater your success rate is.
Absolutely.
So if we can elongate that treatment and give people a powerful, positive house to live in or a treatment program, then we're going to have more success.
We throw millions of dollars at other things that are absolute waste. There's no reason why we can't throw millions of dollars at loved ones.
Yeah, amen.
Because most of these people are loved ones. They
Amen.
have moms, they have brothers, they have sisters, just like I do. You know?
Yeah, sure.
And no matter how you feel about them, be loyal to your family and love them. Continue to love them. Continue to support them. You are no longer doing anything for your bipolar.
No.
This is what my main point is, that the drugs affected you to the point where you were misdiagnosed.
Yeah, side effects, yeah.
They're not, the people you're dealing with, people that are on drugs that are at that point where Jamie was, that's not the real them. This right here is the real Jamie Casey. And there's a real your brother, there's a real your sister that stole from you, beat you up, lied to you, let you down. But inside that person is the real brother, sister that you knew. Don't give up on them. Please don't.
That's right.
All right, guys, I got to pay some bills here. Jamie, thank you so much, brother. I'm going to continue to lean on you. I'm also going to make sure that when I do the group text to Kevin and Corey, hey, I need a bed, because I'm bothering them too much. I'm going to hit you up too, man.
Anytime. That's what we do, brother.
Guys, tonight's show is brought to you by Fast Phone Fix on 238 Union Street. Fast Phone Fix is good at fixing your iPhones, which everybody breaks, their Androids, which everybody breaks. And for the next month, if you mention New Bedford Guide, they are offering 25% off their services. So for a $100 screen, you get $25 off, guys. Make sure you go visit Fast Phone Fix, and that's on 238 Union Street. They actually do gift cards there, I believe, and to your brother that's walking around getting his finger sliced on his iPhone, you can give him that for Christmas to get his iPhone fixed. Also, Creative Auctions is doing their annual auction over at the New Bedford Inn and Suites on Hathaway Road, and that'll be on December 3rd at 1 p.m. The auction starts at 1 p.m. Thank you again to Attorney Jay McMahon. Good luck on your campaign, sir. Jamie Casey, thank you for your continued devotion to the recovery of others, along with your continued success with yours. And as a man of God myself and faithful man of God, I appreciate that you're pushing the good word out there. Gosh, you hit me with stuff yesterday, and it's like, man, I went to church myself yesterday when I met with you. You know, not only did I do a pre-interview, you told me a few things that I came home with and thought of real deeply. And we touched upon everything from children to recovery, to marriage, and it all resonated with me, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, man.
And that's the meaning of church.
That's community, brother.
You know, people don't realize, people say you go to church. Yesterday was church, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, called to be the church, man.
Yes, sir. Guys, thank you so much. Sorry I went over, but with guests like Jamie and Jay, it's inevitable. Thank you so much for your continued viewership. Be kind to each other, New Bedford. Don't look down on people that are struggling. Reach down and help them up. Have a great week. Don't forget, guys, I'll be doing the toy drive. I'll be releasing all that information on Facebook, and also I'll be posting the link for United Families that Edwin's putting on. Let's help those families out in Puerto Rico. Let's help the families that are now in New Bedford enjoy New Bedford and welcome them warmly, and have them want to stay in our community and be positive people in our community, and reinforce the need that as a community we can all help each other. Probably the words didn't flow out correctly on that last sentence, but you get the point. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night, and continued support on the show. See you next week.